Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren.
Ladies and gentlemen, a cordial welcome here in Vienna at the joint press statement of 3 European guiding figures in European politics. And I'm very pleased indeed that upon invitation by our chairman, Mr. Kickl, Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and also chairman of Fidesz in Hungary, has come here. I'm also very pleased that the chairperson of ANO from the Czech Republic, Mr. Andrej Babiš, has also come to Vienna. And of course, as a host, our chairman, Mr. Kickl. And the decisive advance information which I would like to give you is that we want to make it quite clear that this is a press statement. It's a joint statement of the 3 of us. And this is part 1 of a press conference, where in a second there will be a press conference in Brussels or in Strasbourg, where then all the questions that you may have can be answered. Here today now, we have only the press statement. This has been scheduled very at short notice. You know that Hungary will take over the presidency tomorrow, so this is a very press statement at very short notice, and therefore I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Kickl, who will give some introductory statement. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Harald Wilimski. A warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it is a historic day today, because as of today, we are entering let me call it a new era of European politics. And I am talking about an era of freedom, an era of sovereignty, an era of peace, prosperity, and of values. Well, thinking back some time, around a decade ago, the Freedom Party was represented in the European Parliament by just 2 non-attached MEPs. And at the time, we hardly played any political role at all to speak of. But we had a huge potential, and the huge potential I'm referring to was attributable to the fact that we have consistently, in line with the good Austrian rationale, positioned us at the international level as a political force that has given center stage to our home country, permanent neutrality, and most of all the Austrian tradition of bringing people together, of talking, finding commonalities, common ground. Well, it is 3 weeks to the day that we had European elections, and in Austria, strengthened by the trust of the people, we were able to win 6 seats, and this doubled the number. And we accepted that result with great humility. And our task is now to ensure that this will of the voters will get the utmost importance also at the European level. And I have the pleasure of presenting a new alliance today. It is an alliance which is formed by patriotic powers, all of whom playing a leading role in their countries. And this alliance is to represent a launch vehicle that is to take other parties at the European level on board in order to ensure a good future for Europe by joining forces for our generation, our children, and everybody who is to follow us. And as you all know, the new European Parliament will be constituting on the 16th of July in Strasbourg, and observing the time period and limits in the lead-up to such a constituent meeting, we are presenting today a group composed of 3 parties and their representatives which seek to establish this new positive patriotic movement in Europe, and therefore will be heralding this necessary new era in politics, a sea change. In concrete terms, from today on, all political forces that wish so and that can align themselves with our positive political reform efforts are most welcome. And from what I heard and what has been emerging over the last few days in the background, it will be much more than some of you might suspect right now. Our Freedom Party has therefore been able to position itself most successfully at the international stage, at the party that facilitates alliances and networking. Well, we stand for something Austria has in its political identity of very long stood for, and we hope that it will be positioned in this position in the future too, also with the help of this alliance. In other words, Austria as a venue of negotiations, of encounters, a hub between East and West, as an engine for detente and peace, and a country in the center of Europe that enjoys international standing and reputation thanks to this neutrality policy it has put into practice in a most credible manner. So on my right-hand side, I have Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who is currently the only head of government in the European Union who is taking a successful stand against illegal immigration, against abuse of the asylum right to asylum, against excessive centralism at the European Union level. And he is a head of government who, on the other hand, stands up for the historically grown values of Europe, family, for the Christian Occidental heritage of our continent. And for me, it is a hopeful and most encouraging sign that after the Freedom Party and Viktor Orban have always advocated a peaceful solution in the war between Russia and Ukraine, which we condemn, that in the meantime, the Pope has also raised his important voice and has spoken out clearly for peace and a ceasefire. And this adds, in my view, adds a special particular prestige to our political alliance today. Dear Minister President, dear Viktor Orban, a warm welcome to Vienna. It's a great pleasure to have you here in Vienna. And likewise, it's a huge pleasure and honor for me, to welcome the former, and according to all polls, the future head of government of the Czech Republic, Andrej Babiš, next to me. As a successful businessman and politician, well, he has played a decisive role in shaping Czech policy, his home, and he will become a central member of our political alliance. His party, ANO, stands for political reason, in other words, meaning enshrining national competences in the home country, which actually is required by the postulate of subsidiarity in Europe. He most successfully has stood up against the rampant illegal immigration, and he's also calling for a peaceful solution in the war between Russia and Ukraine. And particularly this sensible positioning have made Andrej Babiš and his ANO no longer compatible with the fanatic ideas of the EU centralists. And in this respect, the change to our asylum was the most appropriate step. I do not only believe, but I'm firmly convinced that ANO will be very comfortable in our center and will also contribute substantially to a good European future. Andrej Babiš, a very warm welcome to Vienna. And for me, as a representative of Austrian politics, well, it is very important that we Austrians may launch these new initiatives with two of our neighboring countries, because, we form a strong core of this new reform movement in the center of Europe. And I'm, as mentioned before, firmly convinced that we will be joined by many in the next few days. Austria-Hungary, Czech Republic. This is a very special and very strong force field for a positive reform movement, and I'm very proud that an Austrian patriot in the best sense of this term has the pleasure of participating in this kickoff event, this founding event. And it has always been said that the international of nationals is a contradiction in terms. This is just impossible. But the alliance we are presenting to you today proves the exact opposite, because we are not focusing on breaking up Europe. We do not want to destroy Europe, as centralists often claim, in order to make people feel insecure and then derive their own legitimacy from some threats they have invented. No, quite on the contrary. We want to revive the pluralist character of our continent. We believe that our task is to ensure that the unique features of the wonderful nations of Europe will be preserved and can thrive and develop prosperity in the future, that we ensure cooperation wherever necessary and where it is beneficial to our peoples, and all that on an equal footing based on mutual friendship. And precisely for this reason, we do not at all, will stand by and watch while a European superstate is evolving, in which the parliaments of the member states, which have been legitimized by their citizens, dwindle in are degraded actually into some kind of folklore department, and where sovereignty of the individual states is just an empty shell or an empty word without real power and importance. In reality, we who are sealing this alliance today with our signatures, we want a Europe that can develop again with pride, aware of its value, traditions, and diversity. This is how we want Europe to present itself. We do not want to leave Europe to the von der Leyens, the Macrons, or any left-wing ideological experiments. We don't want to be tossed about by somebody else's interests. We do not want to be pushed into some conflicts or wars just to serve other purposes. And this is certainly not what we want. We do not want an EU government with a total loss of national competences. We want to make sure that the elected representatives of the people in the member states enjoy greater value. We want that direct democracy can outweigh European law. We want a Europe of genuine subsidiarity with a clear commitment to diversity on this continent. Yes, this is what we want. We want that this EU administration is streamlined, fewer commissioners, at least 1/3 less, as the EU has actually required and prescribed for itself. We want an EU parliament that is much smaller. For instance, the size of the US House of Representatives. This is 435 members compared to the EU Parliament 720. Now you see, this is something is going wrong here. We want to reduce the influence of 35,000 lobbyists in Brussels, and we want to massively promote the influence of the peoples of Europe, and we want to reclaim competences from Brussels, bringing them back to our home countries. As you see, it's a fully positive program for the peoples of Europe. As you all know, after the Brexit referendum, a white paper by the EU Commission was adopted with outlined 5 potential scenarios for the development of the future of Europe. And actually, I quite like 2 of them. So on the one hand, there is this coalition of the willing, in other words, that only those states who wish so may engage in deeper cooperation in those areas where they believe necessary. And the other scenario is the scenario called scenario number 4, which can be summarized in a nutshell: less but more efficient. And by the way, it is the scenario which we, in the year 2017, have negotiated into the governing agreement with our then coalition partner. We definitely do not need a European Union that interferes into anything from the degree of crispiness of French fries to addition of insects to our food to a left-green climate dictate that it's pushed across the entire continent, which in reality just leads to a planet economy, deindustrialization of Europe, and the loss of prosperity. We, quite on the contrary, need a Europe that meets and lives up to the original goals of the European cooperation, that fills it with life and passion. It is about peace, it is about prosperity, it's about safety and security, and for most ideally, all citizens of this continent. Ladies and gentlemen, before coming to the end, I would like to thank you very warmly for having accepted our invitation to this presentation of our joint declaration. And now I have the pleasure of handing over to the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, to whom I'm most grateful for having given us this time slot, because I know that he is very busy on the day preceding the day on which Hungary will take over the presidency of the EU Council, in other words, the fate of the European Union for the next 3 months. The floor is to you, dear Prime Minister Viktor Orbán.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So this day has now also arrived, and historians will decide in a few years' time how important that day was. We think that it is the day where it was begun to change European politics. Since the mid-'80s, I've been in politics, And since '89, I've also been active on the international scene. I've seen everything that happened in the past 25 years in European politics and over the world scene. And as a result, I feel that I'm legitimized to say, and I also have the courage to tell you that '89, an era of European politics began. The wall had come down, and this era was finished and concluded with the elections, the current elections to the European Parliament. So this era has come to an end. What is beginning now is a new era. And the first and perhaps the decisive step in this new era is that a new group in Parliament is being established that will change the course of Europe. First of all, I would like to thank Chairman Kickl for allowing me to attend. We have known each other for a long time, and I have always admired him, not only because he made the Freedom Party to be the largest one in Austria, and I also very much appreciated the government politics that he has made in his own country. And therefore, it's an honor for me to have followed his invitation to come to Vienna today. Last week, there were 4 news from Brussels, and namely what party organizations have been launched, and we didn't comment that. We simply worked quietly on it, and thanks to Chairman Kickl, this work led to a result. And now we are creating a political group, which, in my opinion, will be like a boost rocket and will soon become the largest political group in Europe. And this will happen in a few days' time. And then the skies will be our limit. As far as the situation in Europe is concerned, this is quite clear. The European politics needs to be changed. This is what we've been saying for a long time. But what is not so important is that the people in Europe have said that as well. And they have said that Europe needs a change. In 20 of the 27 countries, these parties have won the election that promised people that there will be change. And in 20 of the 27 countries, the parties won that want a change. I was in Brussels last week, and I can see very clearly that the Brussels elite is resisting this. They do not accept in Brussels what is the decision by Europeans. They don't want a change. They want to maintain the status quo, but this is not acceptable. And therefore, this joint group is now being formed so that the change will come in implementation of the will of the voters and against the will of the elite in Brussels. You know yourselves that Europe's economy is in a crisis, that Europe's weight as an economic power is going down, and illegal migration has become the main topic. And in our neighborhood, there is a war that we couldn't prevent, that it broke out, and after it broke out, we could not stop it. And now we are living in the shadow of an escalation of the war. And what Europeans want is 3 things: peace, order, and development. And what they are getting from the elite in Brussels today is war, migration, and stagnation. And in addition to the external poor conditions, the poor conditions and the wrong decisions by the Brussels elite have contributed to this development. The European economy have made the economy vulnerable, and we are facing more or less an economic war with the most important trading partners, and the green transition is also something which they have failed to do. What is happening in Brussels is not green politics, but it is a bilous green politics. And we will not be saved, and we will actually be poisoned. And today, more coal is being burned in Europe than before the Green Deal. And prices are much higher than before. And this is destroying the economy. Political change in Europe was launched. Many European governments had to step down because of the war, because of the election in Europe. And that's proof of the fact that democracy can work only on a national frame, and national governments had to take account and acknowledge the decisions in Europe. But Brussels is, and in this situation, it is our duty to enforce the will of voters in Europe. You have here three political parties in front of you: the strongest Austrian party, the strongest Czech party, and the strongest Hungarian party. And we are assuming this responsibility and to launch this new platform and to start this new political group. And I would like to make it quite clear that our objective is, and that we believe that this will happen, that in a short time, this will be the strongest right-wing group in the European Parliament. And therefore, our patriotic manifesto, which you will be having in your hands very soon, will be issued. And here the ideas and the objectives are summarized and put together, and this is in what direction we will be working. Let me say it's a great honor for me that on the invitation by Chairman Kickl, I'm here. I have just one more task here, namely to pass on the floor to Prime Minister Babiš. But let me say a few words. The chairman said before that in politics in Europe we do things a little different from what's happening in Brussels and how things are done in Brussels. We do not support migration. Illegal migration is something that we stop. We represent the traditional family. We believe in national sovereignty. And an important thought, this is an island of difference here in Hungary, in this big liberal Europe. But, you know, all of that is very nice and sound, but this is not enough. And I learned from Chairman Babiš that this is not enough. What we need is more. Otherwise, these things don't happen in politics. These ideas cannot be implemented. What you need is something important. And he showed this very clearly in Europe. What is needed is success. What is needed is good, positive political activities. And when I was a finance minister, I also respected him because he was the best finance minister in Europe. What he did concerning value-added tax was really almost a financial miracle. You may no longer remember that, but I quite well remember that because we got the solutions from him. And when he was the prime minister in Czech Republic, this was really very successful. It was one of the most successful European governments, and this is proof of the fact that ideologies alone do not have any long life. It is success in governing that will be the decisive factor. And this is a great pleasure for me, therefore, to give you the floor, Mr. Babiš.
Takže dobrý den, dámy a pánové.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you here and now today. I would like to thank Prime Minister Orban and Chairperson Kickl for our joint declaration, our manifesto, and I would like to thank you, dear Victor, for these words. Actually, I'm not used to being praised in such a way, so it is a huge honor and pleasure for me to welcome you here at our historic press conference and to address you. We decided to establish a new political parliamentary group in the European Parliament, Patriots for Europe. We have joined forces because we have three main priorities we share and which unite us. And these priorities will define our EU policy, defending sovereignty, fighting illegal migration, and the issue of the Green Deal. So, first of all, we are firmly convinced that in the context of adhering to the unique cultural identity and maintaining the unique cultural identity of the European countries, it is important to strengthen sovereignty of each and every member state. We seek to achieve a European Union that is based on strong and independent national states, but not a federation that is dominated by Brussels. Secondly, we are resolved to solve the problem of illegal migration. And the Asylum and Migration Pact adopted at the EU level needs to be changed because what we want is safety, stability and prosperity of the European citizens. We will undertake an all-out effort to work towards measures aimed at protecting the external borders of the EU, that dismantle smugglers' networks and that ensure that those who have no right to stay in Europe can be removed immediately. Every country must have the right independently to decide who is to live in their country and work there. Thirdly, we see that there is an urgent need to revise the Green Deal. Our parliamentary group wants a well-balanced approach to its environmental policy, an approach that ensures and supports sustainable economic development. And the Green Deal is actually strengthening the competitiveness of the EU. It has pulled a brake on economic development, and it actually jeopardizes our European economy's competitiveness. So we will develop socially just, economically viable solutions. And for this reason, we suggest the following solutions. In other words, lifting the ban on internal combustion engines, lifting the emission certificates, an end to restrictions on the energy sector, implementation of equality of all measures for funds and financial instruments. What we want is an energy independence that is to be strengthened. We want to strengthen the development of raw materials. And for this reason, ANO decided to leave its original group and join with like-minded parties a new group. And within this new group in Parliament, we can actually fill the program we promised to our voters with life and implement it. And just because we understand Europe very well, we stand here at the cradle of the birth of the patriotic European forces. We want to develop an EU that respects the sovereignty of its members, strictly protects its external borders, and that supports sustainable, fair and just environmental policies. We invite all like-minded individuals and parties to join us. By joining forces, we will be able to ensure that a strong Europe that performs better can be established that serves the interests of its citizens. I would like to thank all three chairpersons for their words, and now we proceed to the signature of the Patriotic Manifesto, and this is the text the three parties have agreed on. So this is the launch pad we referred to. This is the launch vehicle which other parties and groups in Europe may join, and we will then forward this manifesto to you in the future via all official channels. And I would like to ask Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary to sign the manifesto.
Sondern darf ich Ihnen
So, I would like to thank you for attending the meeting here today and for interest in this press statement. And let me point out again, this is only part one of a presentation to the press, and part two will be the part where all political forces in Europe will be invited, and then there will be here we're talking some preliminary talks so that they also can sign the manifesto for which we have invited them. And with that, we will start and launch the setting up of a political group for the European Parliament, and we will be in a continuous progress and process of integration and cooperation. And at the very end, I would like you to join us for a final picture so that you have plenty of photographs to take home.